What's going on, Soul Nation, and welcome to another No Rest for the Wicked video. My name's Brian if you happen to be new around here, and today we have something absolutely special for you as the devs are sharing some really awesome updates with us over on the Discord. Now, this video might have a weird transition in it because I had already filmed an intro for the information that we got this morning, but it hasn't stopped flowing, and so we've got some even more bits of information, some map sizes, some areas, and some screenshots that I think hopefully you guys are going to enjoy. So there will be, this is the new intro because I want to go over the biggest pieces of this, the most exciting updates, and get your thoughts on those, and then we'll transition into the rest. It's a packed video, it's a long video. Feel free to use the chapter markers to jump to any specific section that interests you the most, but without further ado, let's kick it off. Thomas says, sorry that this update is taking a bit longer than they had hoped, but it's basically the first really huge content update, and we should have definitely announced way back in advance that this one is going to take a bit longer. But ultimately, I think we just need to ship an amazing product. If it's a bit late, so be it, but players will be happy anyway. It then just massively improves the game, and it does. There are some cool things. So let's start with the newest information and why we're actually filming a second intro to this video. Thomas writes, I'd love to talk more about this. Right now, the world's still a bit on the small side, but throughout development, we're already working on a ton of areas. So I'd like to share this so that people have a bit of an idea of how Isola Sacra is panning out ultimately. And you see what would be essentially and tentative that things can change, the massive world map. And you might be wondering where we are, but Thomas does confirm that. But he also says this: please keep in mind this world is subject to change. We might add more here, cut more there, etc. And I'm sure that some of you will recognize some of these zones. So this will give you a bit of a picture of how we see Isola Sacra unfolding for 1.0. He goes on to say, by the way, you folks are not seeing here is the y-axis. Obviously, some of these areas have areas underneath them, etc. Think of Tur, for example. The mountain has an entire mine section underneath it. The settlement has the entire grotto dungeon underneath it. So it is actually bigger than it seems from this image. And when asked about where is Sacrament in all of this map, he highlights the Sacrament area right here, which you can go back into the world map itself. You can find it right here in that centermost area, meaning we have only a small percentage of the total map in the game. And I'm very curious to see with this next update how much more of the world that we get access to, and will there be some still remaining zones to be incorporated with the 1.0 release. He also says this shows the frozen peaks of Tur, but not the section underneath Tur, double confirming there are mines and dungeons and more below it. Now he goes on, these red areas are for Kalen and Fort Reach, and he then shows off an in-game screenshot of Fort Reach covered in snow and looking absolutely phenomenal. Now that is the new information, but we still have so much more to talk about, so I'm gonna let past me take it over from here. Folks, we're doing a Polish pass on quality of life and major annoyances. Let's have the discussion on that. We've already identified quite a lot of silly issues that we need to take care of before they drop the next update. But I'd like to hear from you folks here in general as well. So as you're playing Wicked, what are your main sources of frustration? I chimed in as a reply, just heads up, just jumping in on this. The XP in the Crucible, something bring it back. It has actually, I think, taken away from my experience overall as I level up different builds. As I have my builds leveled up, Crucible's fun. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but that's my one thing. I'm gonna die on that hill for sure. Anyway, he continues. Here's a few things that we want to tackle still, so you'll get a bit of an idea about this in this one. Timers, players can upgrade refineries at vendors by upgrading the vendor, but they can only get the tier 1 refineries for their houses, which results in refining at their houses taking an awfully long time. Hints always appear at the top of the screen, but oftentimes players don't notice Hints should instead render on screen where the action is happening. Number 3, vendors. Vendors have unlimited amounts of items, so players buy them, enchant, and sell, and buy the same item and do it again, etc. in order to get the enchantment rolls they like. Vendors should be changed to restock their items. And I'm going to jump in here again on that one. I thought that's how that was working. There's been times where certain items have a limit. There's certain items that you can just buy as much of for sure, but there are some items that were a handful you get to buy and then they're out of stock until the next day. So I don't know, maybe that seems like they're going to enhance it that all the items end up functioning that same way. Number 4, UI. Gyms don't show the item details, what effects they have on gear. Players only see that when they go to Eleanor. Number 5, players can't target Farm Plague Ichor. And then number 6, large protection. Ensure that players don't fall off cliffs when they attack and perform rune skills. Number 7, timers. Danos only starts upgrading when all resources have been contributed. The process bar should already start to progress even if the player hasn't contributed all the required resources yet. Actually, I think that's a pretty nice idea, is that way you can get them started, and thus as that kicks off the timer, but still needing more resources, so maybe the timer gets paused when it hits that resource allocation, and then you keep contributing more resources and thus reducing the timer and that delay. I think that actually is a pretty interesting idea. I can't wait to see what they pull off in it. Anyway, he continues. Number 8, vine jump kills. A lot of times players die by running towards climbable vines and then they jump off instead of climbing down. This was done so that players have the option to jump or climb, but should probably be changed to do a forced climb instead. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I know I have died multiple times by fall damage. Number 9, boss loot should always feel satisfying. We don't have a good way to guarantee a good loot drop, so even if the unique item that is assigned to the boss doesn't drop, we should ensure that it at least drops a really good item anyway. And number 10, quick step doesn't feel satisfying as satisfying as roll. We need to work on making quick step a bit cooler so that it is more obvious that the hierarchy is quick step, roll, and then fat roll. Anyway, what other sources of frustration and things that annoy you, he asks? I think that we also need to do a pass on Findling so that people get more excited when he shows up. So as you might expect, this kicked off a discussion over in the Discord, and so I'm going to highlight some of the questions and points that the community has made and Thomas's response to that as kind of hopefully an ongoing conversation. And this kicks off with Red K, who writes, all these should address major frustrations for me for sure. With this, would you take a look at parry telegraphing or the current state of parry stays? I have over 70 hours with the game with multiple playstyles, and I'm coming from such quote-unquote difficult games too, so still can't understand parrying. Thomas replies, yeah, I think the problem is that the parry windows are set per weapon instead of just a general window. I do not like the parry system in this game. It's something that I completely avoid, especially in my builds. It'll be interesting to see if they do a pass on that and if that changes over time, and I'll be sure to let you know. Thomas continues, he says, we're also introducing the Pestilence in this next update. I don't want to give too much away, but something will happen in this update and the Pestilence will start to spread across Isola Sacra. The main goal here is to ensure that the overworld doesn't stay static anymore. Right now on live, this stuff is silly. We freeze the areas at level 20, which is never the goal. So instead, the live system will now spawn way more diverse enemies and also increase in level appropriately. But also, after you finish the main campaign, stuff in any area of Isola Sacra also has certain chance that every X time segment that they could become infected by the Pestilence, which then means the player has to fight back the Pestilence, which spawns new enemies and challenges across the entire overworld, which leads to new resources, etc. People in general right now have very sensitive about anything that is tied to time. So we're also introducing a feature that allows the player to control that, but still some players might get frustrated again if they haven't played in a month, and most areas of Isola Sacra are infected. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I personally cannot wait for it. It's going to feel like a living, breathing kind of world. And Thomas goes on to talk about, he says next, well, no, players are sure going to love the play system, but the fact that it's tied to time might annoy some players. And that's, you know, you're always going to have that, and you're never going to make everybody 100% happy. But he goes on to say, it's like coming back to your Animal Crossing save after some time not playing and everything has grown over with weeds. Continuing on, I always loved the idea behind Animal Crossing to feature a living, breathing world that keeps on going even if you're not playing. I usually don't play Animal Crossing all that much, but it is I like a lot of the design intentions behind it. This also seems to be some of the intentions behind an MMORPG, despite the fact that they're not pushing for this to be that MMO, but that living, breathing, shared realm kind of experience, I think is an interesting thing to see, and it will be fun to watch how it plays out with this game's future. XMT Ronan writes, will we then find out that Bola is the creator of this pestilence, and will we have to fight her? And Thomas says, Bola is the whole quest line. We just didn't get it in yet. So we'll have to wait and see how we go from there. XMT also asks, not sure if this is related to any of this, but is there a plan to also improve how stealth works? Maybe more shadow zones that you can cover, slightly faster movement speed, backstab chains, or stuff like this. It's just an idea I had 2 days ago when I tried to do the Mariner's Keep by getting stealthy, but there was some certain gear that looks very assassin-like with daggers and hoods in the game already. Thomas confirms, absolutely, but that's going to come with the Combat 2.0 update. Now, as to a when, where, and how, well, I think that is definitely not included in this next update. So this is, I think, a bigger tease at the future, but we will ultimately see. Especially in multiplayer, we want people to fulfill certain roles so that one player plays the brute, the other player plays more stealthy ninja guy, and the other mage, and then a hunter on top of it, etc. And yep, that they're thinking about with their combat and enemy encounters, that's where they're going to really start to shine. You have various classes in Diablo and PoE, etc., but most of the times the gameplay just resorts to every class should be able to blow everything up on screen as fast as possible, which I always thought was a bit of a shame. Instead, I think it'd be way cooler if players actually have to think strategy, meaning more stuff like brutes attacking from the front, drawing attention to himself so that the ninja guy can quickly flank the enemies in a backstab, while the hunter is prepping enemies with ranged attacks, and the mage guy heals, buffs, rests, nerfs enemies, and uses spells to screw with their enemies. As well as, if you don't know, that there will be friendly fire in this game, so just blasting off big spells could end up hurting your party somewhat. This is going to lead to either needing to be in voice chat communication, or you're going to see some kind of telegraph or audio cue within the game to let you know that a big spell is on its way. But wait, we still have more. Soap is asking, I do have some feedback on the quick step. Rolling and heavy rolling are both quite satisfying and fluid, and the quick step feels fluid, but it needs more visual oomph to it, in my opinion. Seeing as it is directly inspired from Hades, there are a bit of hoops that you might need to jump through in order to deliver the oomphery animation in the third cycle going on in Wicked, rather than mostly 2D in Hades. I feel it is a little floaty at the moment, but I think it could be a little bit more snap to it. Next, when Thomas was asked, basically, will all the classes be viable solo, he does confirm, yes, every class will be able to solo the game. And what I would add is that not in like an equal measure, right? Certain classes probably going to have a difficulty basically attached to them because this is a skill-based Souls-like ARPG, and I think that's exactly what we all really want. We don't want everybody's going to have their strengths, and every class is going to have their weaknesses, and that is going to make the game harder or more difficult depending on your playstyle and what you're looking for, as RPGs have worked in the past. At least that's my opinion and view of it. But he also just confirms what we just talked about a little bit ago. Yes, friendly fire is still going to be a thing, confirming that you probably want to play with a microphone, but instead the mage just casting huge AoE stuff without announcing it, players just standing in the carnage without anything happening to them. XMT follows this up, says, yeah, well, with friends we will, but casual MP, but is it possible to summon remnant people like in the Souls, will be more chaotic, which is amazing because it creates a sense of community. Thomas says, I think that we need to adapt some of the rules fighting games have. Like before any spell, we should have a clear spellcasting notification like Terry Bogard shouting Buster Wolf before performing the special attack, so that players know that when the player casts Hellfire that they better get the heck out of there. So not just a visual cue, but also a cue via audio. Now, Thomas from here kind of pivots to talk about the update after the next update and some of the things that they're looking at, including in that, as well as the 1.0 release. But before we continue on, I just want to say thank you guys so much for the support and all the new subs around here. If you guys like ARPG news coverage, my perspective, especially when it comes to what's going on in the gaming world as a developer myself, but also namely as just a dad, that's what you kind of get here. And and as somebody, I take a lot of pride that I get called far left and far right all the time by people, which tells me I'm right smack dab in the middle. And I think there's a lot of nuance to be had with these difficult discussions online. And I think that shying away from those difficult discussions is perhaps what has led us to a lot of the disappointments or the frustrations and the drama and the extremes out there. Having a voice that hopefully represents people who are in the center, who wants gaming to be better, who wants gaming to be for everybody, but at the same time, not going to the extreme of, pointing at either side and saying that they're bad or they're wrong. Just having that honest and open conversation. That's what you're going to get here. If you guys stick around for that, I'm sure the sub button is around here. And if you do sub, sound off in the comments. I really do appreciate it. I always like to welcome you guys officially to the channel. But let's get back to the news and coverage, because Thomas says, especially when asked, are there going to be any fun things to do in Sacrament, like playing instruments or mini games? And Thomas says, yes, but the Sacrament update is going to happen after this one. I don't know if he's implying that it's going to be directly after this one, but it is saying that it is coming, and we're going to see something like that. And he goes on to talk more about instruments, because he says it'd be super fun if we do have instruments like in Final Fantasy VII Remake or The Last of Us, etc., so that you could learn how the notes work, so that you could actual musicians could actually perform music together. Now, one last question was asked about season festive items inside Sacrament, and Thomas says yes, but probably only once we hit 1.0. Now, this is important because this transitions us into what he's talking about over on Twitter, where he writes, how do you folks feel about seasonal items? With multiplayer and trading, it's always nice if people can trade stuff that actually is rare and can't just be grinded for, but I wonder if I'm the outlier feeling this way. When we started on Wicked, I asked a friend of mine who still to this day plays Ultima Online to just show me his stuff and give advice on what the most important thing for him to show me was his castle that contained tons of items that you can't even get anymore. So he used Ultima to scratch his collector's itch. So how would you personally feel if we featured unique items that can only be gotten during certain events or seasons? Now, my answer to this question is, as long as they come back in follow-up events and seasons, I have no issue with that, but I don't want to see games push more into the FOMO, which for those of you who don't know, it means fear of missing out. It's that artificial, accelerant that makes you feel like you have to play or you're falling behind. We see that has worked time and time again in the past, but it does have like a burnout feeling. People get fatigued and tired, and they're wondering, why is this game that I used to have fun now stressing me out because I feel like I got to go do my chores? So when it comes to seasonal items, event-driven items, they don't have to be all the time, right? We could say that certain items maybe you only got during the winter, and that's fine. And I can get behind that easily, because that means next winter, hey, maybe that item's there. That also will impact the trading economy and so much more. So as long as it doesn't become something that can never be got again, that's something that I don't want to see. Now, you can let me know if you differ slightly, but I just think that, like, why work to put stuff in the game that ultimately becomes so rare? We see it with like Magic. We see it with so many things that it has the potential for obviously incentivizing more real money trade than anything else. But that's just my take on it. I think I'd love to hear yours in the comments or over on Discord or on the next live stream. Now, Thomas also has more to share over on Twitter. He shares this out today. He says, I've been working on the games industry for a better part of my life now. I started sincerely dabbling with level editors and CGI when I was around 15, 16 years old. All that led me to study the traditional sculpture, which then allowed me to work as a character artist for a while until I felt comfortable starting a studio to make our own games. Over the course of my career, I have seen how the careers of a lot of other creators unfolded and thought it would be worthwhile to quickly talk about that today. Every now and then, I remind myself to stay hungry and stay foolish. This mantra that Jobs talked about in more than one of his speeches. How I interpreted this is that we should never feel comfortable enough to settle. It's also tempting a lot of times to just create another one of those successful things you have already created. To take that job opportunity that pays you more money where you'll become a manager, but ultimately give up on creating things. It's always tempting to take the easy route, even if it might not be the right route for you. I've seen this happen to friends and acquaintances over and over again through the years. I think that it's most important that your work life is that you find out early and particular talent that you have, and you just stay true to that. No matter what, having a better job title and making more money is no use of it. Ultimately, makes you unhappy. So find how you can contribute, how you can make people happy, how you can elevate others to create the best work of their lives, and don't let your path get swayed by factors that don't strictly contribute to these goals. And the best way to achieve this is by just making yourself useful. And when you've reached that goal and you've made something successful, either alone or with your team, always remind yourself that that's what got you here, which was probably that you took risks, that you tried to do something outlandish, and you didn't even know that you could make that you rise to the occasion. We only learn if we do these things that make us uncomfortable, that challenge us. So buckle up and get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, because that's how that you know you're progressing. And I think that's like an excellent transition into our message of hope, because this is what we want to do here. We want to empower you with the belief in yourself. Now, I had a coach in high school. He told me this, and I think this was very, very helpful. He told me that you are only going to grow when you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And what that actually does is it expands your comfort zone. And so you always want to be striving to push yourself out of that, whether that's physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. These are the various different pillars. And so with what Thomas is talking about here in your career, this is so very true. But how do you start? And honestly, I think it's so simple. It sounds kind of dumb, but we repeat it over here because it is something that we need to continually remind ourselves. And you got to start with the belief that you can. It doesn't mean you're not going to fail along the way. There's no guarantees that you're going to succeed every stinking time. In fact, I would bet that the successful ones in here, the ones that have either succeeded or are on their way to success, are the ones that have failed more times than they care to admit. But it's important to talk about our failures and the struggles that we have in our lives, because we're all human at the end of the day. I'm not this perfect individual. I'm not this saint. I literally am just a dad who struggles on just like each and every one of us here. And it's important to know that you're not alone, but that belief in yourself can literally be all the difference, because it can help you pick yourself up rather than constantly tell yourself you're a victim, or you're not good enough, or you're not lovable enough, or you're not attractive enough. All that is lies. All of those are lies, because none of that is true. But we tell ourselves that, we beat ourselves up, we make ourselves believe that we can't. And the thing is that whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right at the end of the day. So I would encourage you guys not to get or lose hope or lose heart when it comes to getting, the crap beat out of you. That's a guarantee. That means you're human. That means we're all playing the same dadgum game. Comparison is the thief of joy, and social media will easily make it feel like you're the weird one here. But what that makes you is actually normal, like the rest of us is like, oh my gosh. Now, I do want to take a slight pivot on this, because pushing out of the comfort zone, I saw a comment the other day. I'm not going to highlight it because I'm not going to try to shame anybody, but talking about how they don't like this. They're just going to go consume their porn. And it made me think that, we should have a conversation about porn, because it is a drug for us men. And I want to encourage you, as somebody who has kicked that habit. I am so glad. I never want to go back to it. But I want to highlight a quote from St. John Paul II, who writes, "The problem with pornography is that it does not reveal too much of a woman, but too little." And what he's talking about here is that the problem of porn is that it removes our humanity. It removes especially it turns that person or people into objects for our own satisfaction rather than for what our intended purpose here is on this earth. And so I would encourage you guys, especially the guys out there, but women have a different version of their porn as well, is to try your best. And it's about putting in effort, because while I've had insane experiences that we've talked about on live streams about how God has just like worked in my life in insane amounts of ways, I know that there's also a lot of struggle that leads up to those moments of intervention in people's lives. And so, like, for you out there struggling, there is hope. It can be done. It might be one awful long process. We want these things sometimes to be light switches, but what really it is just a series of saying no to ourselves over and over again until we push out of that comfort zone and we become capable of saying no to ourselves even when we're uncomfortable about it. Anyway, guys, I thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully you got something good out of this video. And if you hung out for the message of hope, hopefully you got something good from this as well. God bless each and every one of you. I hope I will see you in the next video. But until then, take care.